Welcome to another episode of Business Way Outside the Box, sponsored by PR Works. This is a podcast about unusual businesses or unusual ways of doing business. Today's guest will be talking about solar and its implications for both residential and commercial. And today's guest is Daniel Mello Guimaraes, who is the CEO and co-founder of Boston Solar, the largest solar company in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts is one of the leaders of solar in the nation. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, Steve.
And so let me read a little bit about your background so people have a sense of who you are as well, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You spent about 10 years in commercial banking in Europe and South America. And then you crossed the Atlantic to help found Boston Solar. You've got a BA in economics and French from Davidson College and a master's in international securities, investment, and banking from the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. And your fluent language, your first language is Brazilian. Or Brazilian, yes?
French, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. And you speak several other languages, including English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Brazilian.
There you go.
Okay. We'll probably stick to English today. So welcome to our show. I think one of the more interesting aspects of what you do is directly related to the change in the presidential administration. And I wonder how that impacts your world. What do you anticipate?
So at the federal level, we think the Biden administration is going to put a lot of strength and emphasis on growing clean energy for a number of reasons, not just the environment, but also to help with the infrastructure and with growing good jobs. So that's good. We see that coming at the federal level. But solar is a very local industry as well. So we see a lot of good things coming from the federal level, but ultimately that's helpful, but we also have the state reality. So it's not just the federal level that will drive solar adoption, but we see good things coming from the Biden administration.
And when you say good things, can you be a little more specific in terms of what you anticipate either for rebates, tax incentives, those kind of things?
So the administration can only do so much, right? Congress has to actually go along. So I do think there will be some focus on either tax credit extensions or a rebate instead of a tax credit, a tax rebate. That's possible. That's at the federal level on the incentive level. I do think the administration will drive adoption and will drive requirements and will try and get as many of their divisions as possible to actually adopt solar as well. So that's one level. But I do expect there to at least be some focus on either extending credits, tax credits further, or turning it into a rebate of sorts for those that cannot use tax credits.
And on a state level, what do you anticipate there?
So at a state level, we did just have a climate bill that did not get signed off by Governor Baker. At the state level, we have a SMART program that is a declining block program. It's a great program, but it is going down quickly because of the adoption. So we are looking forward to the successor. And so at the state level, we do need to start looking at what comes next to address the fact that the incentives are dropping because adoption is increasing so quickly.
And within your business, Boston Solar, I understand, has approximately 400 installations a year. Are you seeing an increase? What kind of activity are you seeing on sort of the ground level?
For our business, we are seeing that pace increase. The industry slowed down More recently, it slowed down due to COVID, and then it started picking back up again. We are seeing an increase in residential installations. So we're seeing a continuation of that uptrend, but we're seeing faster growth on the commercial sector, which is starting from a relatively smaller base. So we do anticipate residential solar to continue growing in Massachusetts. We anticipate a faster percentage growth on the commercial.
Okay. And so I think that a lot of people are intrigued by solar, but they are naive about the process and how to take steps to even explore the topic. Tell me sort of what makes your company different? How should people vet a solar company? What should they start thinking about at the beginning of the process if they like the idea of trying to save money and do better by the environment as well?
Yeah. So I don't love saying this, but there are a lot of different players out in the market. And so it is important that people look at the options and do their research. There's also a lot of misinformation. Solar can be complicated. And so there's either a lot of misinformation or misunderstandings, confusion. So I always recommend that people do their research. For example, our website has a lot of good content. I recommend that they check out reviews. Ultimately, I recommend that people look at companies that can provide them with options as opposed to just trying to sell them one specific thing and make it fit for everybody. I think it is case by case. And if anyone is interested, they should try and find out what their options are, as opposed to just going with whatever was presented to them by a company that only sells one specific thing.
And on the residential side, who do you find as the candidate who's typically drawn to your company or solar in general?
So typically our customers, they own their homes, they have spent some time in their home, expect to spend more time in their homes. They are looking at reducing their expenses. They care about the environment. They're looking at ways to contribute to the local economy. Typically, our customer likes to own the system and go with a local company that has worked with a lot of their friends and neighbors. Typically, that's our customer. We get a lot of customers from referrals.
Okay, and you're doing more commercial work as well, both with corporate entities as well as nonprofits.
Correct. We are doing more and more commercial work.
And those would be larger systems typically.
Typically, yes, although we have done a fair number of smaller commercial systems. When you start talking, for example, we've done a number of churches. The systems are not necessarily large, but they are considered to be commercial.
And there are some misconceptions about solar. One being that Massachusetts itself is kind of a dreary, sunless state. What are some of the, maybe you can respond to that, and maybe even some of the other misconceptions that you bump into on a regular basis?
So one of them is, Massachusetts doesn't have a lot of sun. It snows. It's cold. It also has one of the highest utility rates in the nation. So when you take into account the fact that it has high utility rates, that it has great local incentives, and it does actually have good sunshine, then you look at the whole picture and solar makes sense. So just because it's not sunny all the time and we're not in the equator doesn't mean that it cannot make sense. It does make sense, and that's why a lot of people are doing it. Another misconception for solar is you put solar on your house and you no longer have to pay a utility bill. Well, that depends. If we can address your entire consumption, then that's right, but you're still going to be connected to the utility and you're still going to have to pay a customer charge. So often people think, oh, I put solar on, I'm done with the utility. Well, that's not true. That's called off-grid solar. And to participate in the SMART program, you have to be connected to the utility. So that's different. But generally speaking, a lot of our customers get a lot of savings. They can save somewhere between 50 and 100% of their utility bill. And so they like that part. Another forget blanking out on another misconception, but there was another misconception.
I assume one of the misconceptions is that solar devalues your home for resale.
That is a great one. It can devalue, but it depends on how you go solar. So if you walk into a house and there is a bunch of things on the roof that were not installed properly, and you've got pipes going everywhere, and it does not look pretty, it looks like the workmanship is questionable, that's going to be an issue. Another challenge is that the solar leases or PPAs, these are the third party ownership where you basically don't own the system, but there's somebody paid for solar to go on your roof and you're saving money that way. But you have a long-term contract, and not everybody is interested in having a long-term contract. Some people go solar because they are trying to go away from the dependence on another party like the utility. So in those cases where you have a lease that's a 20 or 25-year lease, if you're going to try and sell your house, you may have a challenge of somebody else taking it. It may narrow the buyers for your house, but it doesn't mean that solar is bad. It doesn't mean that leases are bad. It just means you have to think about it and take that into consideration. Some people are concerned about solar, but as solar becomes more widely adopted, home buyers become more used to buying a house that has solar on it. And the reality is when you buy a house with solar, your operating expenses are going to be lower. It means you can afford a bigger mortgage because you're paying less on utility bill.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And how's the process? So let's say I have, I assume you're doing virtual house visits now during the pandemic, and that you might look at my house from Google Earth or from a drone and determine how much sunshine I'm getting. We may have a conversation on Zoom or even just telephone to discuss the issue. How long does the process take if I fall in love with the idea and you find that I'm an appropriate fit for solar?
So it doesn't take very long. It takes the time for us to connect, for us to do a little bit of homework, to design the system with remote technology, and to talk to you. The more you understand what your goals are, the easier it is going to be for us to help you figure out what solution makes sense for you. We can do it in a matter of days. And I'm talking about conversation and signing a contract that says, okay, now I want to go solar. So that could take days, it could take weeks. It depends on, are you making the decision on your own? Do you have any other decision makers that need to be involved? Do you have anything that needs to be taken care of? For example, if you need a new roof, are you going to need to get a roof quote? So there's certain things, but it can be done reasonably quickly. We are doing virtual assessments. That's the contract. Afterwards, we need to come out physically and do a site visit so that we can assess and make sure that what we could get remotely is correct. We have to get inside the house. We have to look at the structure of the roof. And then we need to look at the electrical. Those things they have to be in person. And then that starts the rest of the project.
And so we're talking about, let's say, if I'm a fairly lucid candidate and ready to make a decision and give you a decision, are we talking a couple months really to get if my roof is in good shape and we're good to go?
From start to finish?
Yes.
Probably closer to 4 to 6 months. Some projects move faster. There is utility interconnection, and we have different utilities. Let's talk primarily about the investor-owned utilities, which is basically Eversource and National Grid. Some of them move faster than others, but you have to go through that process, and that can take a little bit. And then you got to go through the permitting process, and then we basically schedule an installation. So it can take a little bit of time, but within 4 to 6 months should be a good timeline. Some take longer, some less time.
Okay. And then some people think about solar and solar storage and batteries as a solution to a potential blackout versus a generator. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we think energy storage is a great solution. For the most part, it's very important to understand what load we're going to be backing up, because energy storage can help. But if you're running a lot of unnecessary loads, but we think it's good. There's a connected solutions program that, again, it's only available for the investor-owned utilities, but that program is helpful, and it's making the adoption of energy storage with solar easier and more affordable. And there's even with the connected solutions program, there is the ability to participate to get a heat loan, a 7-year zero interest heat loan from MatSave.
Okay. And have there been any bumps in the road that were surprising to you compared to other ventures you've been involved with?
Lots of bumps in the road. There's an expression called a solar coaster. So put it this way, we have utility. There's utility, there's state, and there's federal. So if tax credits are going to start or finish, that causes some chaos. If the utilities start running out of net metering allocations, which happened a while back, that causes problems. If a state rebate changes to an SREC and then to a SMART, that causes things. There have been a lot of different bumps on the road. Lots of great lessons learned.
And one of the things is you need good people to grow, right?
Correct. It's all about the team. It is all about the team. And here we've spent a lot of time and energy hiring talented people, because this is not easy. This is not easy. And it's, for us, the focus is the customer experience. It's being high touch, and it's holding hands and making sure that the process becomes as easy as possible, because it's complicated.
Yeah. And so it sort of brings me to, I think that there are consumers, there's commercial clients, and there's potential job applicants who'd like to learn more about your company and about solar in general. What's the best way for them to contact you?
They can go to our website, bostonsolar.us, and there's a lot of background information there. And there's contact forms, and depending whether they're an applicant or whether they're looking for their options on solar, they can just sign up for an appointment right there. So our website is the best place to go to.
All right. Well, thank you, Daniel. This has been a great segment for Business Way Outside the Box by PR Works. If you know of somebody who has a business that's unusual or an unusual way of running a business, please contact us at prworkzone.com, and we'd love to consider having them on as a guest. Daniel, thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here.
All right.